What I remember doing during the first hours of today was to have some of these dill pickle Lay's potato chips because they're leftovers from when Mom and I threw that 4th of July party. In which Mom's friends were invited. And they didn't really eat the food. I'm kind of just did that very early on today because in my mind I don't want to waste those potato chips. And then the other thing I did early on today was to do what I've been doing each day for a while now, which is to rearrange my halfling farms and fields in an effort to make it so that I can fit in one more field, one more of these. And after some effort in rearranging stuff, I at last managed to do this within the first hours of today. I would say I did this somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. And now this is probably the most I'm going to be able to fit in, unless something incredible happens. I've been trying to make efforts to scout provinces so that I can then complete those provinces, all the encounters, most likely through negotiation, and then have enough completed provinces to get another province expansion. And in this case, most likely make some room for whatever the elemental settlement is going to be like. Or make space for one of those manufactories I'm going to need. I believe I'm boosted in the Satiant Good Elven Tree Gum, so I'll have to get the space to get some plank manufactories that are high enough level to be able to produce this substance. On top of having to deal with building an elemental settlement. I fell asleep today somewhere between 6 and 6:30, somewhere between 6:30 and 7 in the morning. after I did some work. Coloring in the planks of the dock. I drew mostly on the bottom side of that styrofoam block using a bronze metallic Sharpie marker. Thing is, at one point, for some reason, the paint on that Sharpie marker became wet enough that the paint had a serious bleed problem. More so than I get mildly with fresh Sharpie markers. In those cases, I still have some control. In that case, both when it happened the first time, before I fell asleep, and when it happened the second time, after I got up around 5 p.m., I woke up around 3 p.m., but I didn't get up. I just went back to sleep. Had some coffee around 5 p.m., 1 cup. May it last until around 7:45 p.m. When I had that poke bowl with the shrimp in it. And it was a poke bowl salad with no grains. No quinoa, no whole wheat rice, no golden rice. Just veggies and stuff rich in protein, like this chef salad. I think it took me somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half to finish that pond with lily pads and lotus flowers. For the front, the side where the IHS is, I might leave the text as it is or make them more cloud-like. I think I'm still on the fence about that. I'm going to add some good detail to the stuff on the bottom I put on the front side. Yeah, but other than that, I'm pretty much going to keep it somewhat simple. That kind of goes for the back side of that styrofoam block too. I'm doing something totally different here. That situation with that metallic bronze Sharpie marker. It got on areas I didn't intend for it to get on within that styrofoam block, but luckily none of it got on the front side. Before I solved the situation by wiping off the excess wetness on that bronze metallic Sharpie marker with the fingers on this hand. I didn't think to use a towel. I kind of panicked a little bit because a drop landed outside of the docks. That dock planks area. Luckily, I managed to fix it using a blue Sharpie marker. By that I mean default blue. At least what I think of when I think of default blue. Some might say it's indigo, but it's a hue of blue. And then a drop of that bronze metallic Sharpie marker got on the back side of that styrofoam block. Left a bronze streak. That ended up pretty much dictating what I would do for the whole back side on that styrofoam block. I had to fix that bronze metallic streak by turning it into a drawing of a firework. And then on the front side, I started drawing some I remember from an animation of an Aesop fable or something on YouTube I saw years ago. I remembered them as being referred to as reeds as a plant, but it turns out they're more formally known as cattails. I started drawing some in around the perimeter of the pond. I was originally going to do narcissus plants like I think I did last time I did. I depicted a pond on a styrofoam drawing. But then I decided not to do that, primarily because that would involve making part of the styrofoam drawing blank. Small parts here and there, which I have done in the past, but for some reason, for this one, I don't feel like doing that. And plus, due to that hills outline I did initially on the front side of that styrofoam drawing, I don't think I really have room to be able to do narcissus leaves. I mean flowers around a majority of the perimeter of that pond. What I'm currently thinking is that for the middle part of the top part of the perimeter of that pond, maybe I'll just do the hill either completely plain, or I'll include some flowers with it. Flowers I might depict as multicolored dots, simply because I don't want to disrupt too much from the sunset skyline the sunset skyline that I'm going to create using hues of yellow, red, orange, and a dark hue of gray. I'm thinking maybe I should keep the text as it is so it stands out more. From the general, the sunset. The sunset skyline. I don't want to disrupt it too much from the skyline I've created with that hills outline with subtle curves along the way for the hills. I mean, on the left side of the front, I do plan on drawing a little cherry blossom. Yeah, but other than that, I'm not going to disrupt the skyline too much. I think one or two of the cattails ultimately extended a little bit over the ground, the line between the ground and the skyline. The cattail plants themselves, I made black using a black Sharpie marker. A fine tip Sharpie marker for the oval or rounded square part of the cattail, and then an ultrafine black Sharpie marker for the tip of that plant, essentially. Other than these things, though, I'm going to try to keep disruptions to the skyline to a minimum, since that's what I feel is best to do for this styrofoam drawing. Immediately following that incident with the bronze metallic Sharpie marker, I felt pretty bad because in a sort of sense, it felt like I had ruined. I could feel that there was a setback with the styrofoam drawing. The marker actually bled into the inside of the styrofoam block to a point, which manifested itself on the back side as a sort of blackness appearing around polystyrene bits in one spot on the back that was first created the first time this happened in the morning, and then got bigger the second time it happened. but I covered that up using a dark green Sharpie marker, fine tipped. And I blew on any planks that got the too wet bronze metallic Sharpie marker in order to dry it up. Along the way of coloring in the planks of the dock, if I ever bled it a little bit into the outlines of the planks, I just fixed them up using the same thing I used to draw them in the first place, an ultrafine brown Sharpie marker. Then as I drew in first the water lilies and then the lotus flowers, the first one I did on the bottom side, I used a darker shade of pink, a darker hue of pink. But I'm pretty sure it's still believable that a lotus flower could be that color. I used default light green and a darker hue of green to make the water lilies, which I did first, then I did the lotus flowers, and as I was doing that, and especially as I was getting into coloring around those water lilies and lotus flowers, using first an ultrafine default blue Sharpie marker, and then an ultrafine default blue Sharpie marker, I went from feeling somewhat sorry for myself and a little bit tired to being motivated and crying tears of joy a bit, because I know from past experience that I can make good artwork on polystyrene even if I am given a setback or two during the project. I have done it in the past. It hasn't always been easy. Recently, with fresh Sharpie markers, they, like I said before, they bleed a little bit, which can make doing precise work difficult and result in me having to retouch it at some point, but the important part is that I always manage to do it. There are a few styrofoam drawings that while working on it, I accidentally poked myself in this thumb with the Sharpie marker, sometimes resulting in blood being drawn. And me having to put on a Band-Aid after cleaning out the wound with soap and hot water. But even after doing that, just goes to show I just have to be more careful from here on out. And that wound does heal. It does heal, and then the thumb is good as new. And the styrofoam pieces I work with aren't always ideal, but I still manage to make it work in the end. I make a mistake while drawing or coloring and then either fix it somehow later on or just find a way to make it work. I have unfinished projects, but I don't intend to leave them unfinished forever. I will finish them someday. And as for what happened with that bronze metallic Sharpie marker, now I know what to do should it happen again. And I also know what to do to try to prevent it. Each time I take the tip out, look at it before I draw with it to make sure it doesn't look too wet. As long as I do that, I can probably prevent it from being a problem from here on out. Well, learning something new is about consistently practicing at it. Getting better at something is consistent practice and learning from mistakes. That's what it's all about, and that's the important thing to take away from today.